NSG 318, Study Section 4, Nursing Research and Theories. Introduction. Lately, the relationship between nursing theory and research has gained more attention. It appears that in the past 2 decades, more research work has been published. Research and theory for nursing practice has the objective of improving nursing practice, education, and patient care. These articles strive to discuss knowledge development in its broad sense, reflect research using a variety of methodology approaches. This study also combines several methods and strategies in a single study because of the journal international emphasis. Article donors address the effects of their study for a global audience. Therefore, the nursing research studies has increased from 13% to 21%, but the use of nursing theories has been minimal, although research results are accumulated progressively in regard to theory or to other researches. Our study focuses on nursing research and its theories. Learning outcomes for study section 4. At the end of this study, you should be able to discuss theory testing in nursing research, discuss various types of theoretical and conceptual models as research framework. Theory testing in nursing research. In the early stages of a research project, the researcher should consider the theoretical or conceptual framework for the study. The framework for the study is usually determined after a thorough review of the literature. If nursing is to build a scientific knowledge base, nursing studies should be based on a theoretical or conceptual framework so that the findings may be placed within the existing knowledge base for the profession. The most efficient way to obtain a body of knowledge for nursing is to build on the work of other researchers who have used the same theoretical base. Even a small research project becomes quite important when the study can be added to those of others who have used the same theoretical frame of reference. Many studies are conducted in which the researchers wish to study a particular problem but have no theory in mind that will be tested. In such cases, an attempt should be made to select a theory that will be useful in guiding the study. Sometimes, more than one theory might be appropriate, but the researcher should choose the one that seems to describe and explain the relationship within the study variables better than other available theories. Choosing a theory for a study may be a difficult task, especially for the beginning researcher. Descriptions of theory may be obtained through many sources. Various books and articles contain information about theories. Once a theory has been selected, it is wise to consult the original or primary source of the theory. For example, if information is sought on Maslow's theories of motivation, Maslow's 1970 book should be read. By using a primary source, the researcher will gain the most accurate description of the theory as presented by the theorist. The chosen theory should be considered throughout the research process. A step-by-step use of the chosen theory requires that the researcher review various theories that may be appropriate to examine the identified problem. Select a theory to be tested in the study. Review the literature on this theory. Develop study hypotheses or research questions based on a proposition or statement from the theory. Define study variables using the selected theory as the basis of the theoretical definitions. Choose study instruments that are congruent to the theory. Describe study findings in the light of the explanations provided by the theory. Relate study conclusions to the theory. Determine support for the theory based on study findings. Determine implications for nursing based on the explanatory power of the theory. Make recommendations for future research concerning the designated theory. Nursing conceptual models. Conceptual models are models made up of concepts and propositions that state the relationship between the concepts. These concepts are generally very abstract and are not readily observable in the empirical world. Conceptual models in nursing present broad general concepts of interest to nursing. Common concepts identified in nearly all of the nursing models are person, environment, health, and nursing. Forwards 1993, Fitzpatrick and Ward 1996, George 1995. Each nursing model addresses these elements in a unique fashion. Conceptual models. Several nurse theorists have developed conceptual models concerned with the phenomena of importance to nursing. These nurses include Dorothea Oren, Martha Rogers, Callista Rowe, and Betty Newman. Attempts to develop theory based on these models have been carried out by some of these theories, as well as the background for theory development. A brief overview of the models introduced by these four nurse theorists will be presented. Orem's self-care model. Dorothea Orem's ideas about self-care first appear in the nursing literature in the late 1950s. This most recent modification of her ideas are found in the fourth edition of her text Nursing. Concepts of Practice, which was published in 1991, a model focuses on each person's role in self-health care. Self-care involves activities that people generally know how to take care of themselves. According to each person's ability to meet self-care needs, the nurse provides wholly compensatory, partially compensatory, or supportive educative care. Only compensatory care is provided when the patient is totally unable to perform self-care activities. Partially compensatory care is provided when the patient has some ability to perform self-care activities. Finally, in many instances, the patient needs only supportive educative care to assist in meeting self-care activities. Orem's model is particularly appropriate today with the general public's increased interest in enhancing physical and physiological well-being. Beach et al. 1996 used Orem's self-care deficit theory to study factors associated with patient self-care activities after an acute myocardial infarction. These factors were divided into Orem's theory categories of self-care limitations: limitations of knowing, limitations for making judgments and decisions, limitations in engagement, in result achieving courses of action. The top-ranked limitation was patterns of personal or family living that interfere with self-care. Rogers' model of the unitary person. One of the most unusual conceptual models in nursing is that proposed by Martha Rogers. She first presented her ideas in her 1970 book, An Introduction to the Theoretical Basis of Nursing. By the time she died in 1994, her ideas had made a great impact on nursing and probably will continue to do so for many years to come. She continually refined her model, and when she spoke to groups of nurses in later years, she frequently asked that they discuss her most current ideas rather than those presented in her 1970 book, which she called the Purple Book. Just as she viewed humans as continually evolving, her ideas were continually evolving. She originally referred to a theory of unitary man. In later years, she used the term unitary person. Humans and their environment are viewed as two energy fields that are always open to each other. Each human field is unique, and change is always toward increasing complexity and diversity. There is no repetition in the life of a person. The human field continually reorganizes into a new and novel form. Aging is viewed as a creative process directed toward growing diversity of field pattern and organization. Rogers, 1980. Rogers' model is unique in that the person is viewed as a unified whole. No parts or subsystem are separated out, although other models propose to present a holistic view of people. This view is often contradicted by the model's examination of the parts or subsystem of people. Rogers' conceptualized model was used as the framework for Yashesky and Mao's 1995 study of health in adolescents. The researchers study human field rhythms, creativity, and sentience in relation to perceived health status in 106 early, 111 middle, and 113 late adolescents. Significant positive correlations were found between perceived field motion and perceived health status in early, middle, and late adolescence. The researchers also found a significant positive correlation between human field rhythms and perceived health status in late adolescence, and a significant positive relationship between creativity and perceived health status in late adolescence. Rowe's adaptation model. Rowe first published her ideas about adaptation as a framework for nursing in a 1970 article in Nursing Outlook. She has continued to publish extensively on her model. The most thorough presentation of her idea is found in the second edition of her text, Introduction to Nursing, an adaptation model, which was published in 1984. In her work, humans are considered to be biopsychosocial beings in constant interaction with the changing environment. A person must adapt to a variety of stimuli called focal, contextual, and residual. Focal stimuli are those that immediately confront a person in a given situation, such as a loss of a loved one, involvement in a car accident, or loss of a job. Contextual stimuli are background stimuli that include the person's sex, developmental state, coping mechanisms, and the surrounding environment. Residual stimuli concern beliefs, attitudes, and traits. The model stresses that the person needs a nurse when unusual stresses occur or coping mechanisms are weak. Nurses use the nursing process to help adapt in 4 different modes: physiological needs, self-concept, role function, interdependence. Newman Systems Model. The Newman model first appeared in a 1972 article in Nursing Research. It was also presented in Real and Rowe's conceptual models for nursing practice, both in the 1974 and 1980 editions. Betty Newman presented refinement of the model in the 1982, 1989, and 1995 edition of her book, The Newman System Models. Nursing interventions may occur at the primary, secondary, or tertiary levels of prevention. Primary prevention is appropriate before reaction to a stressor has occurred. Secondary prevention is used when reaction to a stressor has already occurred. Tertiary prevention is used to foster rehabilitation and return to wellness.
The nursing process is divided into 3 steps: nursing diagnosis, nursing goals, and nursing outcomes. Newman's model was used to study parents' perception of the stressors of pediatric ambulatory surgery. Meligalig, 1994.
Parents identified intrapersonal, interpersonal, and extrapersonal categories of stressors. Intrapersonal stressors included anxiety about the child's feeling and reactions to surgery. Interpersonal stressors included the parents' feelings of separation anxiety when their child went into the operating room. Extrapersonal stressors identified by parents concerned their responsibilities in caring for the child at home and the availability of resources to use if problems occurred at home. The Health Promotion Model. Nola Pender's 1996 Health Promotion Model, HPM, focuses on explaining health-promoting behaviors using a wellness orientation. According to the model, health promotion entails activities directed toward developing resources that maintain or enhance a person's well-being. The HPM encompasses 2 phases: the decision-making phase, the action phase. Theoretical and conceptual frameworks. A framework for a research study helps to organize the study and provides a context for the interpretation of the study findings. Either a theoretical or conceptual framework should be used in all quantitative studies. Theoretical and conceptual frameworks are often used interchangeably in the literature. The two frameworks are similar in that both provide a background or foundation for a study. However, there are differences in these two types of frameworks. A theoretical framework presents a broad general explanation of the relationship between the concept of interest in a research study. It is based on one existing theory. When using a theoretical framework in a study, each main study concept is related back to a concept from an existing theory. A proposition from a selected theory will be tested in any study based on their particular theory. Suppose a teacher wanted to know if contracting for grades will motivate students to earn higher grades. After exploring different theories, she might decide to test a proposition from Carl Roger's 1969 theory of learning. One of Roger's propositions is that learning is facilitated when the student participates responsibly in the learning process. The two concepts are learning and participate responsibly in the learning process. The two study concepts that can be matched up with these two theories concepts are earn higher grades, which will match up with learning, and contracting for grades, which will match up with participate responsibly in the learning process. Thus, based on the stated proposition from Roger's theory, the researchers will be able to predict that students who contract for grades would earn higher grades than students who do not contract for grades. If there is no existing theory that will fit the concept to be studied, the researcher may construct a conceptual framework to be used in the proposed research study. A conceptual framework helps to explain the relationship between concepts, but rather than being based on one theory. This type of framework leaves concepts selected from several theories, from previous research results, or from the researcher's own experiences. The researcher relates the concept in a logical manner. A conceptual framework is a less well-developed structure than a theoretical framework, but may serve as the impetus for the formulation of a theory. The findings of a study should be related back to the study frame. Otherwise, numerous isolated findings will be in existence for each study. The concrete findings are linked to the abstract ideas of the theory or to the propositions proposed by the researcher in the conceptual framework. Thus, an explanation for the study finding is presented and the body of knowledge on the study topic is increased. Summary to study section 4. In this module, we have attempted to critically examine theory and nursing research. The following were considered. Various theory terminologies were defined. Different types of theories were discussed, as well as the process of theory generation and development. Similarly, different sources of theories for nursing research were considered, along with theory testing in nursing research. The module was wrapped up with various types of theoretical and conceptual models as research framework. Similarly, different sources of theories for nursing research were considered, along with theory testing in nursing research. The module was wrapped up with various types of theoretical and conceptual models as research framework. Theory generation and building through research are essential to the development of scientific knowledge. We've come to the end of study section 4.